Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, well, let me start by thanking the organizers. We are really honored, super excited to be here, and learning a lot, quite frankly. So what we wanted to tackle in today's session, and this is the name that we came up with, is Operational Excellence Unleashed. And we called it a blueprint for success. So we've been working with a lot of global corporations for the past 20 years on their operational excellence journeys, and we kind of have some tips, some at least key elements that all the successful journeys have in common. And many of them, as you will see, have been already talked about here. But let me start with one super easy question, but I bet that if one by one we ask you, what is operational excellence, you will come up with different definitions. And what we found so far is that every organization has some sort of different approach to it. But some of the key elements that those definitions have, the first one, as you see there, is executing in time and manner. So basically, do things right, no errors, which is not a small objective by itself. But it's overall continuous improvement. So continuous improvement, substantial and sustained value delivery, and overall, it's about culture. And what we're gonna be talking about today, it's how to generate, how to foster that culture of continuous improvement across the organizations. And it's not a simple task, because it's about changing human behavior. So one thing about OpEx, wow, that drone is really cool, but it's really loud. Is that at first you might think it's just about a set of tools, it's just about methodologies, but it's not. It's all of those things, but at the end of the day, it's about generating and fostering a culture of continuous improvement. And again, easier said than done, because we're talking about changing human behavior, so how to approach that. We have a framework, let's call it a framework of 6 elements that, from our experience at least, has helped enormously to foster that culture of continuous improvement. And we'll talk about in 2 minutes for each one of them. Hopefully tomorrow in the workshop we'll have more time to deep dive into them and to share with you specific success cases. But let me give you just the tips. So we have, first of all, organization and people. So do we have the right people in the right structure with the right sizing? It's also about governance. Can we identify and prioritize what the critical changes should be? Can we fail fast? This is a new concept, recent concept, that all organizations are now trying to identify. Can we identify those initiatives that are no longer working or they have become obsolete during the way and somehow just get rid of them? Can we follow through delivering change? And then the third part is about processes, and we've talked about during the morning about processes and how can we accelerate the change across the organization, leveraging on those processes. Then a key piece, and the previous panelist commented on that, on KPIs and measuring, so it's about data. We'll give you some tips on that. The fifth element is about how to lever on IT. Do we have the right tools in the right place, and how to lever AI, so artificial intelligence, especially now, which is coming at a huge speed as a big disruptor. And last but not least, this holistic picture of how to, again, generate, how to foster a culture of continuous improvement, it wouldn't be complete if we didn't add the ESG element to it. So today, the ESG element when building an OpEx framework is also a key part of it. It's an opportunity to do ESG by design when we're redefining processes, for instance. So let me walk you through these key building elements. When we talk about organization and people, and this is one of probably the most disruptive elements that have been proven when trying to build operational excellence. And it has been a big change in paradigms in the industry. So usually when we look at an organization, by definition, it's structured by silos. So you have your businesses areas, you have your IT areas, risk, channels, customer experience, all working in their own areas, in their own rooms, with their own objectives that hopefully at some point converge. So some companies, financial institutions first, then insurance companies, obviously the digital natives, Google, Spotify, Netflix, were already born this way with no silos. But for many companies, this has been a huge challenge. So breaking those silos is one of the key elements when building a culture that is aiming towards change. And how do we do that? We rethink the organization. We move from those departments by silos to multidisciplinary cells where you have the business guys with the IT guys sitting together under the same hierarchy with the same objectives, working under agile methodologies, delivering change. And this is a complete game changer. The second element, it has a few ideas in it. The first one is what we call liquid teams, which is basically constantly wondering and constantly questioning whether we have the right people with the right skills in the right sizing. It means constantly driving a strategic workforce planning exercises. Do we have the right sizing drivers? Do we have the right performance models, methodologies? Do we have the right reskilling programs? So again, all about people. The second element to it is about the mix among internal and external people. So do we have the right outsourcing strategy? We have companies now in Europe outsourcing their whole operations, financial institutions outsourcing their whole back offices to Eastern countries like Romania. And that's also a big change, and it has a lot of impact on operational excellence. And the third element to it is the centralization of functions. And we'll talk about centers of excellence in a bit. But there's a lot of thinking and a lot of efficiencies gained from centralizing functions like advanced analytics or IA, centers of excellence. So there's a whole thinking and redesigning about centralization. And the last piece, which again has been talked about in the panel, it's about leadership buy-in. We'll talk about a lot of ideas here, 16 to be precise. None of it will work if we don't have the leadership commitment to effectively drive operational excellence. The way that we look at it, we look at it in 3 layers. So you have your front line focusing on execution in time and manner. You have the top layer with that commitment of changing the organization into a whole new operational excellence and new culture of continuous improvement. And then you have the middle management, which has historically tended to be more of a guiding and not so much of doing itself kind of layer. And now the switch here is to turn that middle management into doers as well. So again, a lot of about organizational and people. From all of that, probably the breaking silos is the key first change into operational excellence. Let's talk a little bit about governance now. So one of the main challenges the industry has faced up till now is you have your typical governance on a yearly basis, very dispersed. The IT departments gathering a lot of requirements, not prioritized by the business owners, and not necessarily showing where the money goes. So really showing what your return on investment has been. And this has all moved towards what we call lean portfolio management. And that means centralized governance every 3 months, so what we call QBRs, quarterly business reviews, where everyone comes together, all the businesses within an organization come together with their best ideas, their business case, very money-oriented. What's the impact on efficiency? What's the impact on growth? What's the impact on customer experience in a very industrialized way? And in a common way we decide where to put the money, where the money is going to be. But it doesn't end there. In 3 months' time, the same business owners that committed those business cases will show again on the next QBR, on the next quarterly business review, and will show then the results. So this creates, remember that we're talking about creating a new and fostering a new culture. This creates a culture of fighting for the money within the organizations. It doesn't apply anymore, any longer, I get a budget at the end of the year, and I'll do the best that I can. It goes beyond that now. So again, a huge cultural shift, lean portfolio management. Now, we need to cascade down from the strategic vision, which is obviously a must, a given, but we need to cascade that strategic vision all the way down to all the organization. And the way to do that, at least in our experience, is by deploying objective-based management. One way to do it, and it has already been talked about in some of the panels this morning, is OKRs, through OKRs, objectives and key results. It's a way where we cascade down the objectives, which are always qualitative, things like we need to increase our customer base. And then they cascade up a specific key results, which are always quantitative. Things like, I'm gonna reduce the churn by 5% in the next quarter. And as you can see, this is another game changer, because we have a lot of transparency in what all the teams are doing. Everyone understands how their work is contributing to the whole picture. A lot of accountability put on the teams. So again, one key piece of building block to create. Then the last piece when it comes to governance is to have a clear methodology to deliver change. And here we have a vast set of methodologies we can pick and choose from. Six Sigma, Lean, Agile, Kaizen, quality management, and so on. Again, from what we've witnessed so far is that there's no one size fits all. So basically every company is taking the best from the market, the best from the standardized methodologies, customize them, and scaling them up. Some of these methodologies do have a few elements in common. The first one is that they all go around a circle of to measure, to define, to change, and to measure again. Now, the second element that is common in those methodologies is that we're trying to deliver in short cycles. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this wasn't a thing, but now it is. We're delivering in short cycles with agile-based methodologies. The third element is that companies are usually incorporating new ceremonies to guarantee that that cultural shift that we're looking for is actually happening. So things like daily stand-ups, planning, demos to showcase our work to the rest of the organization, retros to learn what went wrong and what went right. And then the fourth element in these methodologies is about the agile mindset, so the ways of working that are a bit different from what we've been accustomed to in the market. Governance, again, lean portfolio management, objectives, and a clear methodology to deliver change. Now, processes, and this is also a key piece to it. And the first idea here, when driving change and value through process transformation, and this might be almost self-evident, is that we should aim for the aspirational process. And I'm gonna explain why it's not so self-evident, at least sometimes. What we find is that it's quite common to have process owners changing their processes from a micro re-engineering perspective. So something that doesn't quite work right, we changed it a little, we patch it up a little, and we keep changing from that. But there's not a clear vision of, okay, in 5 years' time, if all the investment that I want to create here, if I have the view of my aspirational process, what would that look like? So here you have an example of some guidelines that one of our main customers in the financial industry uses as a baseline to design those aspirational processes. And as you see, obviously, they have to be customer-centric. They also have to be employee-centric. But that means looking at two sides of the story. On top, you have the customer view. It has to be useful, things like customized, anticipatory. It has also to be easy to use, simple, guided. It has to be quick, efficient, automated, paperless. That's what the customer would be expecting from the process. But on the bottom, you have the company view. We need to create a process that is controlled, so measurable, traceable, that it's reliable, that it's robust, that it's compliant, that it's safe, and also that it's coherent across channels, STP with no errors. So again, just as an example of what it means to define an aspirational process. The second idea here is that there's one key role throughout the organization when it comes to process transformation, which is a process owner. And historically, the process owner has been focused on execution. I have to execute the process in time and manner. So we want to shift that from that process executor to a process re-engineer, pretty much at all levels. That means embedding new capabilities within the process owners and also leveraging on reskilling plans. So we need to kind of guide them to have the capabilities that they don't have now in order to transform their own processes. The third idea here, so one way to accelerate change through process, and now let's imagine that we have the process owner role all set up, that we've communicated the importance of that role, but yet they probably don't have enough methodologies, enough knowledge. They know a lot about the process, but it's not necessarily about process transformation. And they don't have for certain the IT and digitalization capabilities to transform their process. So one way to go around this is to create process transformation hubs, which are usually now combining two things: the process transformation methodologies with the IT and now AI, artificial intelligence capabilities. And this is, again, a big accelerator when it comes to driving change. And again, think that all of these elements are aiming or focusing on fostering a new culture. So that's why we're focusing on new roles and how to embed new capabilities and what the new governance should look like. And the last piece, which is not minor, is that we need to guarantee robust control models. One thing that we've experienced in organizations that have set up a new pace in change through all of these actions is that sometimes they fail in the control model because change is happening so fast they can't keep up. So looking specifically at your control models, reviewing your risk and control inventories, your methodologies, the business continuity procedures, and obviously guaranteeing compliance should be a must as well. Okay, let's deep dive into data. And again, one of the key pieces. Usually you have your CDOs, your chief data officers, driving your whole strategic programs around data, your data lakes, your use cases, and so on. But how can we utilize data to generate a culture of continuous improvement? And again, there are three main ideas here. The first one is, okay, we need to measure delivery. We need to measure what the current process performance is. In some industries, measuring, so having KPIs, key performance indicators, on real time, it's almost a given. Let's take a big retailer across the world that is gathering information coming from all their shops on real time and driving change through the night. So at the next day, they have a different setup in their shops or different products. That's on real time. That's happening on real time. But in other industries, like the finance industry or the insurance industry, this is not easy to achieve. We do have some new technologies that are driving or helping us to gather this on real-time information. One is process mining, which is, again, a big game changer. And the other one is Internet of Things, things like sensorization, especially for maintenance. So again, to measure delivery, hopefully on real time, through some of the new IT solutions that we have now, that we can use now. Then the second idea, and this is even more important or more relevant when fostering a new culture, is how to measure change. It is very common that we find companies focusing on the first part, so we're measuring delivery, but not so common to have companies focusing on delivering change. One thing that we found useful in order to overcome this challenge are what we call maturity indexes, or process maturity index. Here we have a combination of KPIs that are already, most of them at least, are already in the organization, but that they are so dispersed out that we can really gain actionable insights from them. So what you see on the picture there, again, is a real example of a process maturity index that it ends up having a synthetic number of how well or how bad your processes are around different dimensions. Things like execution, are we compliance with the SLAs or not? But also things like level of automation and how that automation is being delivered. Is it straight through process or against your core systems, or is it through some sort of robotics, RPAs, and therefore we need to put more focus on control and governance. So what this enables to do is first to have a clear baseline of where you stand. Once you have that clear baseline, the second thing that it enables us to do is to prioritize the efforts on change. What do we need to change first? Do we need to focus on customer experience on this process or that process, or do we need to focus on efficiency and scalability in other processes? And the third thing that allows us to do is to objectivize the impacts of transformation. So it links back with the idea of objectives and key results that we discussed a bit before. And the third part is again, almost a given the capabilities, embedding the capabilities of big data and advanced analytics to drive change. Okay, moving on to IT and artificial intelligence. And now here we want to share two ideas. The first one is what we call hyper-automation. And this is a combination of two things. The best possible core platforms to drive the business, but also because we know the core platforms do not cover all the possible automations that the processes, the end-to-end processes might need, we also need to focus on digitalization solutions. Things like RPAs, OCRs, chatbots, digital signatures, biometrics, Internet of Things, process mining. And the key challenge for the companies here is to have a clear service catalog of what they want to achieve with this and what are the best solutions and the best vendors to partner with. And now, the second part is AI as a big disruptor, and this is going to be the big disruptor. We already have plenty of use cases that completely transform a process, but there are some challenges to it. The first one is we need to do this in compliance. There's already some big regulatory requirements coming from Europe and the States. And the second one is resistance to change. And the way to do that is to have a clear change model framework to make sure that we drive on all of those AI possibilities. So let me just walk you, we talked about a blueprint. This is what the blueprint looks like, 16 ideas. And the main challenge here is to put them all together. Because I'm sure that most of the organizations are doing some of them, but when you really want to foster and create a new culture almost from scratch, the way to do it is try to tackle a holistic view of the problem, walking through this path. And one final thought, because I'm already running out of time, but one final thought. Operational excellence is a journey. So it might feel a little bit overwhelming when you look at the 16 ideas, but you don't need to do it all at once. You do need to have a clear view of the holistic thing and then start to gradually make changes. And I think that's all on our side. Thank you.